On today's show, can the Dallas Mavericks still win a first-round playoff series? What has changed about the Mavericks ceiling even post the Kristaps Porzingis trade? We'll talk about that and more on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
Hey, Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions. Bang! Bang! It's good!
And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making Locked On Mavs your first listen every single day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, where you can subscribe to the show. This episode is brought to you by RockAuto.com. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit RockAuto.com and tell them that Locked On sent you. And joining me, as always, my co-host, contributor, writer at Mavs.com. The first round playoff pusher, the one more thing king. What you got for me, Isaac Harris?
So before we record, we were joking about how we both separately, we were joking how we woke up this morning and we're like, oh, there's not a Mavs game today. It's like, oh, dang. Like,
joking. No, I was legit. That's legitimately how I felt this morning.
I know, but like I was about to tell you, and you said the same thing to me. You're like, dude, I actually like woke up this morning like, dang, there wasn't a Mavs game today. And I'm like, dude, I was gonna tell you that because that's kind of like.
Did we just become best friends?
Did we? And it just, I think it does speak to, you know, you can't do victory laps and right now anybody of like after one game of the trade. Like I had somebody DM me today and like, all right, you were right. And this team just needed a breath of fresh air. And it's like, no, there is no, you were right.
Yeah, no, not yet. Not yet.
I think you can say it is a breath of fresh air to see like new faces next to Luka and like, you know, different style of play is fun to see. But there is, I feel like even after one game over the past few days, at least for us, that there's like this newer excitement around the team of, and I know we like, you almost like want to take KP the person out of it and just say when you have a star player on your team that is making that much money, that is supposed to be the star player that goes in and out with the injury stuff, and you're trying to figure out what the ceiling is, it can become like tiring at times of like, well, what's this team going to be? The what ifs and all of that.
Well, to me, it's not, for me personally, and I'm sure you listening, some of you, it's not even about KP. It's just about this team had been the same for 3 years. And we've just been watching the same team for 3 years with the same problems and the same things. And now we're seeing a different look, right? We see, you know, they've added the wings and Josh Green is getting some time, and Reggie Bullock was added to the team, and Sterling Brown, and then all of a sudden they make this deal, and now Spencer Dinwiddie is in, and Davis Bertans is in. There's just this new blood and this new life on the team. It honestly doesn't matter who is going to get removed from it, but just that the Mavericks can play with this different style. They can play smaller, they can switch a lot, they can play a little bit faster, they can play, you know, they have more shooters on the roster, more options. Like they have these young guys that are interesting with Josh Green and Brunson a little bit, and Frank Ntilikina, and it's just different, right? It's just a different vibe. You feel like the team has had good chemistry the last couple of years, and so they're building on that even more. They brought in these new guys, and they say, oh, these new guys already feel like they mesh. Davis Bertans is just a fun guy to watch and jack up threes, and the dunk last night. Like it was also the Mavs' probably best win of the season the other night. And so you just wake up with this renewed like excitement about the team, and I'm sure you listening probably felt that too.
Yeah, best road win. It's definitely up there with probably one of the best wins of the season. Did it define the season? I don't know.
Who would say that? Who would say that at a stretch would define the season?
But I'm excited to see them. You know, we mentioned this right after the trade, but I'm excited to see them take a different approach into the playoffs. We get to walk out of this, this next round of playoffs, this year's playoffs, however far they go, first round, second round, whatever it is, win the title, whatever you want to say that, they finished this year, but we at least get to walk out of it saying, okay, they've at least taken two different approaches to Luka in the playoffs. We've seen them take the approach with the big next to Luka as like the main guy, KP, the bubble playoffs, healthy KP. We saw that stretch,
one of the biggest what ifs in Mavs history, maybe
a big what if there, last year, KP in the corner, all playing off Luke, all that stuff with Rick. And now we get to see him take a whole different approach to the playoffs of like small ball, better defensively, switching and so much, faster and
multiple
now
ball handlers.
Yes. Now you have 3 guys who can create, handle the ball and all this stuff, get their shot, get to the rim.
Whereas last year you literally only had one.
Yeah. And so it's like that's what one of the things I'm excited about is we kind of just get a different. Now, I think there is a counter to that also of saying, well, dang, we didn't get to see a healthy KP with this team against a non-Clippers team in the playoffs. I think that's something we can also say a what if on, right? Like,
sure.
What if Dallas didn't play the Clippers, both of the past 2 years, but also what if Dallas held on to KP? I mean, I'm sure we'll do this what if whenever,
that feels like a summer what if series.
We're 8 years into this pod and we're like, hey, what if they didn't trade KP in the, before the deadline 2022? But what if they held on to KP and then they got Utah or they got Memphis or whoever it is, and it's a non-Clippers team, and then they go out and it's like, ooh, and then what if they won a series with the healthy KP this year, and everybody sitting back saying, all right, well, dang, that's what could have happened if we didn't match up with the Clippers. Now we'll never know that, but going back, I'm excited. I'm excited for a new approach to the playoffs.
Speaking of the playoffs, can the Mavericks still win a first-round series? Is that still the goal? Because going into this season, that was the goal. And then a certain point into the season, we said, okay, maybe that shouldn't be the goal. Maybe we should move the goalposts a little bit because this team was way underperforming. And this team just didn't look like they had it. Didn't look like they were going to be able to get to a point where we would be confident in a playoffs at all. At one point, what they were like, 17 and 18 or 16 and 18, and you're just feeling, man, this team, I'm just not sure if I'm confident enough that they're going to win a series. Then they rattle off this win streak. Then they won a bunch of their games. Their defense is really ramped up. They become the top 10 defense that they've become. And so now, can this team still win a first round series? Is that still the goal?
Yeah, that's still the goal. I mean, the first goal is you got to finish top 6. Like, don't play around with it, especially towards the end of the year after the All-Star break. We've joked about this before. After the All-Star break is not the second half of the season, guys. Just count the games on that. But they just got to finish in the top 6. Like, don't play around with it and finish into the play-in. Like, I don't want to have anything to do with the play-in tournament, especially when, right now the Clippers are in the play-in and they might get Paul George back in March. I don't want any bit of the Clippers I think Ty Lue is such an incredible coach.
Clippers team without Kawhi beat Utah last year in the playoffs and went to the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, I just don't want to even have anything to do with that. So, I mean, we also don't. Is LeBron and a healthy AD going to be? If he's healthy, then
I was gonna say AD just tweaked his ankle again tonight.
Yeah, but like, will they be healthy come playoff time? Will they be in the play-in? Like, I just don't want to play anything in the play-in. So, first goal, make the top 6, and then your biggest goal is win that first round. If you make the top 6, you're not finishing top 2 probably. So you're looking at that 3 to 6 range. And it's the same 3 opponents we keep on talking about: Utah, Memphis, Denver. And who, will there be some angling towards the end of the season? We'll kind of see who Dallas or who some of these teams want. I said it, the other day. I say it now. Utah is the team I'm wanting. I want Utah in the playoffs.
Even more than Memphis?
Yep, I do. There's just something about that Memphis team, man. I know they're like unproven, but they're so dang scrappy. And in a playoff series, they
hit threes.
Hit threes, and I get everything with Donovan Mitchell. This dude's put up 50 in playoff games. Like, he's done it at the biggest stage. I love Donovan Mitchell, but I would just rather take my chances. I mean, everybody's gonna be hard. I'd just rather take my chances with that Utah team than a scrappy new life Memphis team that is just going to be, I just don't want to play them. But
coming up, let's get into what makes this team still a playoff contender. Why do we have confidence in this team becoming a team that finally breaks through and wins in the first round? We'll talk about that, and then we'll get into some buyout conversation. There's some guys that are going to get bought out. Does Rick Carlisle know anything about buyout guys? He's reporting news over there in Indiana about buyout guys. We'll talk about that.
He's about to sign David Lee.
Get into some buyouts coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about Bet Online. BetOnline.net is the place to go. Football is over, but basketball is in full steam for pro and college hoops. For the latest odds, totals, player performances, props, and where the next coach is going to be fired, it's probably going to be in Madison Square Garden with the Knicks. Number one source for all your betting needs. It's betonline.net. Reliably.net. So go and check it out. See everything that's available for you. You can check out props and odds for everything. They have this game for Thursday, Sixers versus the Bucks. Bucks is 6.5-point favorite on that one. That one is an interesting one. They still have dunk contest odds up. They have NBA specials. What's the special one? Here we go. Ready for this one? Bet online. Ben Simmons, 3-pointers made in the regular season this year. Under 2 or over 2?
Under.
Under 2 is a minus 140, and over 2 is a plus 100. So if you put down $100, you can win 140 if he hits, less than 2. If he hits over 2, and you have to put down 200 to win 100, right? Or you have to put down whatever, however it works out to. It's
like math.
It's lower odds. There you go. Check out betonline.net, where the game starts. All right, Isaac Harris, let's get into the Dallas Mavericks and their playoff chances. What makes us confident that this team can win a playoff series? For me, I'm going to start with the defense. We've talked about the defense before, but this team is completely different as a defense than they have been in the past. They have multiple wing defenders. They have a bunch of guys that they can throw at, different players across. They still do not have a guy to defend like a Jokic or even necessarily a Rudy Gobert, but they have guys that can guard on the wings, and that's what you really need in the playoffs. That's why the Clippers are so scrappy, right? That's why nobody wants to play the Raptors in the playoffs this year, because they have all those wing guys, right? You look at the playoffs last year. Think about the players that were in the rotation for the Mavs. Luka, Dorian, Tim, Porzingis, Maxey, Boban, Brunson, Josh Richardson a little bit, and Willie Cauley-Stein. Those are the guys that played minutes in the playoffs last year. How many of those are you confident about as a wing defender? It's Dorian, it's Maxey, who was guarding Kawhi, and then it's Josh Richardson, who only played 13 minutes a game last year, right? Think about the roster that the Mavs have now. They have Dorian and Maxey still, but then they also have Bullock. They have Josh Green can play a little bit. Sterling Brown's going to play a little bit. They have
just list the wings, not even even if they're like, hey, top-notch defenders, like Dinwiddie is 6'5". So
Frank Ntilikina, they can throw out at guys. Like, they just have a bunch of other options on this team where they just did not have those at all last year.
Like, just think about defensively. I was listening to somebody the other day talk about shocking. Somebody on a podcast was talking about the Ben Simmons Harden trade, and they were just breaking down that deal and about Seth Curry and about Philly losing Seth Curry. And whoever it was, they were just talking about how big of a loss it was. And the other guy's like, man, dude, y'all are going to really suffer, talking to the Philly guy, for losing Seth Curry. And that guy responds like, yeah, man, we're going to miss his shooting. He plays off Embiid really well, all this stuff. But man, he really is like a defensive liability. Like, he hurts us in the playoff, on defense and stuff. That was the whole basis of the Seth Curry, Josh Richardson trade. Obviously didn't work out for Dallas at all in that, but Dallas looked at it and was like, hey, we can't have multiple defensive liabilities on our team. And Seth was a defensive liability. So just to remember in the bubble, when those plays that are just etched into our memory of Kawhi, with Seth Curry on him, you're like, this just can't happen. You're like,
it's not gonna end well.
No, you're like, hopefully that doesn't happen to Jalen Brunson in the playoffs this year.
And to your point about defensive liabilities, they've been a little negated, right? Tim Hardaway Jr., we're not sure exactly what his role is going to be in the playoffs if he does come back for the playoffs. But I mean, Luka's not a defensive liability. We wouldn't call him that, right? Unless he gets into foul trouble, which has happened a couple times this year. Brunson is still a little bit of a defensive liability. He's been fine in the regular season, but come playoff time, that's going to be a big point of testing. Dinwiddie has not been a great defender, but he's long. He's 6'5", and he's got a long wingspan, so that's going to be there. And then Dwight Powell at times. Dwight Powell has played like switchy defense, but he is not great at the rim, so it depends on what you want.
He can at least move.
And it's a different look than what's been seen in the past. Davis Bertans obviously a big defensive liability, but his spot in the rotation will be limited come playoff time, I think, for sure.
They just have depth on the wing.
You've limited your defensive liabilities, and you've added better defensive wings, and that's why I'm more confident in this team winning a first-round playoff series this year.
Yeah, and it's just like you can never have enough 6'6" to 6. That whole thing, like guys on the roster,
6'5"
it's like
to 6'9" wings.
So if somebody does get in foul trouble, it's not like, yes, you don't want Dorian in foul trouble, or you don't want Reggie Bullock in foul trouble. It's less than ideal, but it's not the end of the world either. You're not looking down saying, all right, yeah, all right, JJ Barea, you're going in now.
Trey Burke, you're coming in.
Yeah, and I mean, even Trey plays like scrappy defense on some point guards, but it's like they have bodies. Like the Frank Ntilikina is a guard, but he can defend above his weight class a little bit. Like Sterling Brown, Reggie Bullock, like you said, like they have guys now on the wing that they just didn't have before. It's the whole thing of like what the Clippers did is like, hey, let's just stock up on wings. Now we just have bodies we can throw out there, and that's what smart teams are doing.
Yeah, and we're not relying on these and some of these guys to play 40 minutes a night. We are relying on probably Bullock and Dorian to play that, but not the Josh Greens, the Frank Ntilikina's, and Sterling Brown. It's just that they have those as an option. The Mavericks 3-point shooting has gone up significantly recently. I started looking at some of the guys, some of the Mavs top 3-point takers so far this year, and like Luka's almost up to 33%. You have Bullock is up to 36%. Dorian is at 36%. Maxi's at 36%. These guys that they really need to knock down some shots. Brunson is at 36%. These guys they really need to knock down some threes are finally knocking down some threes, and that is massive, and that ups my confidence to win a first-round series.
Oh, 100%. I mean, we talked about at the beginning of the season. I mean, what a difference of some of the stuff we were saying at the beginning of the season. Like, man, nobody can hit a shot, especially Reggie Bullock, and then here we go. We talked about Bertans a lot on yesterday's pod of just kind of what to expect from him. Not even what to expect, but like give him a chance type of thing of, hey, can we get a bigger sample size before we say somebody can't shoot anymore? That's all I'm saying about Bertans.
I would rather go with the bigger sample size as he can shoot than the smaller sample size says he can't. But with him, the Mavs do have, I mean, if they need to put a lineup out there where they can score with somebody and they're going to have to win a shootout, then you do have some options, right? You can throw out Bertans and maybe Tim Hardaway Jr. and, Brunson and maybe Dinwiddie, where you can go in there and score a bunch of buckets if you get in some kind of shootout situation. The Mavs do not have the rim protector, big man that can defend, right? They're missing that look. If they have a bunch of other looks that they can throw out there, but they are still missing that look. And I think we all know that. But there's few teams that they would really, really need that against.
Yeah, well, and that's what we were talking about yesterday is, they're almost like writing that part off of, hey, like we don't have the personnel for this. We had to pick and choose. And it's the whole, when I did a few notes before this pod, but it's like what another ball handler versus a rim protector. And this is what the Mavericks ultimately kind of like take the names out of it and everything of, what are we going to roll the dice with? The rim protector, and which was KP obviously, or a little bit more shooting, but also another creator in the team. What is outweighing the other? And right now they said, hey, we would rather roll our dice, roll our money into the side of another creator and a little bit more shooting, and let's see what that turns into.
Exactly. They're confident that their defense can sustain and can be as good as it's been because they can change up and give the look of switching and give the look of, okay, we're going to switch everything to where guys are, we don't have many mismatches on this team. We just talked about earlier how the Mavericks have limited their defensive liabilities as far as players that are playing on the court. So we're going to throw out, this look. And on the other end, we can, we're going to hit threes, hopefully well enough that it's going to negate anything that those bigs can kill us with.
Yeah, and I feel like Jalen Brunson, I was trying to look up Jalen's spot up shots from last year compared to this year. He was very good last year, 45% last year. He's a little bit better this year. I thought I had the other tab open. Dang it.
He's better at spot up shots this year.
Yeah, because it just feels like I was wanting to add some numbers to it just to back up the eye test in this, but it feels like Jalen is knocking down shots. I mean, it feels like he's getting more spot up shots this year compared to last year.
Well, just in the game the other night, like he got a bunch of. I mean, I think Callie Kaplan tweeted out about the Mavs hockey assist last night that Jason Kidd was talking about. The secondary assists where you have one guy passes to another guy who then gets an assist, right? Brunson was the recipient of like 3 or 4 of those the other night.
Yeah, so last year he shot 45% on spot up shots. This year he's at 47% on spot up shots. Excellent rating on synergy. We've talked about that before. In the 87th percentile. I don't have the qualifiers for that, but it's just to say like I mean, Reggie Bullock's in the 84th percentile. He's shooting 41% on spot up shots. Like Jalen Brunson's been a really good shooter from, spotting up this year. And
They
like,
need him to be.
That's one of the keys playing alongside Luka Doncic. It's not just can you defend, but also can you hit a spot up shot? This is something that could hurt Dinwiddie. If Dinwiddie doesn't bring his, 3-point, shooting up, that's where they could. It's like, all right, when crap hits the fan and we need our best lineup out there, if Dinwiddie can't prove that he can hit a catch and shoot shot, a spot up shot, then he might not be seeing the floor next to Luka that much.
And he has not been a good 3-point shooter, right? Like he had 1 year where he shot 37% from 3 in 59 games for Brooklyn. Outside of that, I mean, he's a career 32% 3-point shooter. He's got to get that to 35, 36, where Brunson is right now. And he doesn't have to take a lot of them, right? You just got to make like one a game to keep the defense honest, basically. And then he can drive the rim and do the other stuff that he does well, hit the tough mid-range shots that he does well, all that. But he's got to keep the defense honest, and that's what's going to be big for him.
Yeah, I was looking at Brunson's numbers. I mean, just to kind of prove the leap that Brunson has made. I mean, you look at the top 3 categories of offense for Brunson this year, offensively wise. Ball as a pick and roll ball handler, 309 possessions he's ran the pick and roll, excellent in that, 89% rating at a 1.02 points per possession. Spot up, 87%, excellent rating on synergy. Isolation, 72 percentile, very good rating on synergy. Like this is stuff we haven't, like this. He's playing really good basketball. I mean, this is why the Mavericks, placed their bet on him. And we've talked about the big bet they placed on it. But
coming up, let's get into a little bit about the buyout market, and we'll continue our talk about the Mavs in a playoff series. Talk about all that coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about rockauto.com. If you're a person that likes to fix your own car, if you are working on your car and you're always trying to figure out where can I get these parts, I have to go look, I have to search through it, I have to go to the counter and ask them if they have it, then they don't, then they have to order it anyway. You might as well order it at rockauto.com. Why would you choose to spend 30%, 50%, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or a car dealership when you can get them from a family business that's been serving it to do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years? It's probably like 24 or 5 now since we've been doing this ad for so long for them.
probably.
Rock Auto's been doing it for a while. So go explore their easy-to-use website today to get your auto parts and everything that you need there. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck, right? Right, locked on in their How Did You Hear About Us box. And they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. All right, Isaac Harris. One thing I did want to say about this is I was talking to our friend Chris Arnold today. Chris Arnold,
You got time to get
something to eat. And we were laughing, joking about some stuff, and he brought up something that I forgot about that's a really really good point about this trade and about this team, and I think it matters for the playoff run. Is that the Mavericks, when they were building this new front office, they kept Michael Finley and they wanted to bring in a couple new guys. They obviously brought in Nico Harrison just to run it. But they also brought in this guy, Andrew Baker, from the Brooklyn Nets. And it was this kind of, it was kind of a big thing on Mavs Twitter and on some places like, ooh, this is like a, some people in the NBA were talking about how this guy is a genius capologist. And he's just this guy that knows everything that's going on every other team. And he's going to be the brains behind all the CBA stuff, the collective bargaining agreement stuff that Nico may not know because he hasn't been a GM before, hasn't been in a front office before. But you know what Andrew Baker also knows about? Is Spencer Dinwiddie. He was there his entire career in Brooklyn and knows this guy and has been around this guy. And so him being in the front office, I think gives the Mavs that confidence to say, hey, we should get Spencer Dinwiddie because I think this guy can come help. And Spencer Dinwiddie's going to be key to a playoff run too, right? That confidence that the Mavs have in your quandary earlier. Do we stick with the rim protector that, may play for us, may not play for us, or do we go with this ball handler? The person that's the ball handler matters too. Yeah. And I think that guy being Dinwiddie is going to help. And I think that he can be trusted, in a playoff series to handle the ball, to get some things done. He's been part of some playoff series in the past as well. And I think that mattered to the Mavs.
Yeah, you tell me this, and I honestly forgot all about Andrew Baker even existing. So
I think some Mavs fans did too.
Yeah, I mean, how often are we honestly thinking about people in the front office? And
every day, I just sit here and I'm just like, man, remember that guy.
Dirk. Who else besides Dirk is in the front? But no, I remember the hire at the time, talking to a few people. It's like, dude, this dude is so smart.
Yeah.
And this is a sneaky, signing hire there for Dallas. And when you reminded me of that today, I was like, ooh, I didn't even think about that. The Dinwiddie angle of, would Dallas have made the trade for Dinwiddie if they didn't have somebody in the front office saying, hey, I know this guy, not just like, injury wise, but I know him personally. Like,
right. I can vouch for him.
I can vouch for him. That stuff you hear in Washington, like, it sounds like it's more of a Washington thing than a Spencer thing. And I'll vouch for him.
Yeah. So it's interesting. And he's going to matter if they're going to win a playoff series. If the Mavs are going to win a playoff series, Dinwiddie has to be a contributor. He has to be able to hit a couple threes and definitely be able to attack the rim. And I don't think the Mavs used him right in that first game. I think Jason Kidd will learn how to use him and how to make him work off of Luka and Brunson and not play the three of them all together, probably like he did in the second. He already changed that in the second half of that game, but that'll be interesting to watch definitely going forward.
Yeah, for sure. Do you want to talk about buyouts?
Do you talk about buyouts?
Is Dragic coming to Dallas, Nick?
We don't talk about buyouts.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm sad about the Dragic stuff. I feel like
for those not paying attention, what's the Dragic stuff? Like, is he coming? Is he not coming?
I mean, I feel like we've said for like a few years now, it's like, hey, we're ever gonna get Luka's guy, Dragic. We love Dragic. He'd be great in Dallas, coming off the bench.
His agent is Bill Duffy. Luka's agent is Bill Duffy. The Slovenia connection. Now we have who's the assistant coach's name that I'm blanking on? Igor Kokoshkov. Yeah. We have him on the, there's been that connection for a long time. He goes
to Toronto. He does that interview. And it's like, yeah, I would love to play with Luka. And it's like, all right, it's in the bag, right? I mean, we talked about it forever.
How many reporters say that he wants to go to Dallas? I mean, it's just been something we've talked about for so long. And now they're so close to it, and it doesn't seem like it's going to happen.
Yeah, and then, obviously the trade talk, before the deadline there, which, once again, Nick quote tweeted the Mark Stein, newsletter. If you're not, subscribed to that, you need to subscribe to that it was not Dallas who pulled out of those trade talks, with Toronto, with that Dragic pick center deal with KP and all of that. But what's the Dragic stuff now? They got Dinwiddie. There's really not a spot for him. I mean, you're not going to tell me if Dragic was sitting there saying, I would love to come and be a mascot. And even, if I don't play at all, I would love to just.
He doesn't want to be the JJ Barea of this team.
Yeah. It's like, would Dallas bring him in then? I don't know. Probably. Like if Luka was sitting there saying, hey, I want to bring in Goran, he doesn't really care about playing, I just want him on the roster, they could probably bring him in. But we're not going to blame Goran Dragic for wanting to play basketball right now where he could go to a really good team, which I think he goes to Golden State. And he goes to Golden State and he can legit get good minutes off the bench for a team that could win the title. So then we can all collectively be like, hey, we're going to root for the Dragic team in the finals unless he goes to the Lakers.
And honestly, is it going to make that big of a difference if Goran Dragic comes now or if he comes next year to start the season?
No, it's just, I mean, if he came now, he's just not going to play over Dinwiddie. So
Dragic was also at the Mavs Heat game the other night, by the way.
Yeah, he's been going to Heat gaming.
I know he's been at Heat games, which is funny,
but no. So he's going to go to another team, and it's kind of a bummer because I think before the KP trade, if you would have told me, hey, how much money are you betting on it, I'd probably bet a decent amount. And then they went a different direction with the KP trade. And
according to Woj, these are the teams that have been connected to Dragic. This is not even including the Mavs: Lakers, Clippers, Bucks, Bulls, Nets, Warriors. All of them.
What would the Nets do with him? Hey, come play with Patty, Kyrie, Seth Curry.
Well, he'll probably start in home games.
That's true. It's like, hey, can you
start for Kyrie? Do the thing where the backup quarterback simulates the other quarterback on the other team in practice. Can you do that, but in the game and simulate what Kyrie does? Do the Mavs have actually some buyout guys they should be targeting though?
Yeah, so Nico, was asked directly about that. I think about Cali, the other night, and it's like, hey, our roster's set. Like, we're not doing anything. Okay, so this is pretty much what it is. I don't expect the Mavs to add somebody out the buyout market, but as we all know, coaches, Steve Nash just said to reporters, a few weeks ago, we're not trading anybody. All right, so we all know people
Steve
like
Nash
to lie.
Said multiple times James Harden will not be traded, and then James Harden was traded. Stuff happens in the NBA.
And if we want to do closer to home, we also saw Jason Kidd pump KP up for 6 months, and he's the perfect guy next to Luka Doncic.
I'll take it another level. Mark Cuban said to the media, it would be dumb for us to trade Kristaps Porzingis.
And now he's gone. So
and now he's gone. So
anyway, are there some names out there to look for? I think, the big route would be the only, I don't really would understand a guard route at this point.
No.
They have enough guards on the roster. So are there bigs out there? Rick Carlisle, shout out to Rick, our guy, non-friend of the pod, that broke news about Tristan Thompson, getting waived from there, going up to Chicago. So that takes the name off the board. There's not other.
If you haven't seen that clip of Rick Carlisle, go listen to it. It's hilarious. He's like, Tristan was only here for like 6 days, but he's going to another team, a team up north, starts with a C, ends with an O. If you guys want to tweet it, go ahead and tweet it. And then at the end he goes, Chicago.
But so when you look at the other bigs out there, you look at like the Robin Lopez in Orlando. If he gets bought out, he's probably gonna go to Milwaukee, play with his brother. He played there before anyway. So it's like, can Dallas compete for some of these names, even if they do get bought out? Like, even if like Eric Bledsoe, some of these names, I don't see them going after them. Freedom.
Ennis Freedom Cantor.
Yeah, Ennis Freedom Cantor. He's probably, Facebook's probably loving him right now. So,
but he's not. He doesn't fit. Somebody asked me about him on Twitter actually the other day, and they were like, "Why is no one considering him? He's not he can't defend at all. Like literally at all. It would just, like if you put him and Davis Bertans out there, the other team would score like 150 points, and that's what the Mavs need. Is just a big that can defend. That's literally the one thing they need out of this position, and he can't do it, right?
Yeah. So he's not an option, nor should he be.
No.
And outside of that, you mentioned a name the other day that I'm watching what happens with Derek Favors in OKC.
He does have a player option for next year. So unless he wants out of OKC and thinks he's going to get paid again next year, that is an interesting one. But we've seen stuff. We've seen, OKC just paid everybody, on their roster extra money because they were below the salary cap floor. So who knows what's going on with them? They could pay out the rest of that deal.
Yeah. So I have a smaller name. So basically I was just looking at other bigs across the league and saying, all right, if a big does get bought out, if it's a really good big, they're probably going to a title team, a Brooklyn, a Golden State, something like that. So what's a next tier down big who could get bought out that you're saying, okay, they would come to Dallas based off like a connection or, hey, the style that Dallas is playing. And I got a name just to throw at you. It's not going to, it's nothing to,
it's the buyout.
Pause the pod about, but Juancho Hernan Gomez. Go Mavs. Go Mavs. A friend of Luka, he was part of that deal, the 3-team trade with Alexander Walker and stuff. He ends up on Utah in this deal, but it was more of like I was reading John Hollinger's stuff. I have it pulled up in front of me on the Athletic.
Did you say Juancho or Willie?
Juancho.
Okay, Juancho's the wing, who's in the Adam Sandler movie coming out.
The wing.
Yeah, Juancho's a wing. Willie's the bigger one.
Juancho's like 6'10". He's like a maxi, kind of. I'm just saying it's that type of big that I'm like, he's not.
I just don't see him as a big. That's all. But continue.
Oh, so yeah. I see him like maxi, a 6'10" guy who can move on the perimeter. But Utah got him in this. He's a non-guaranteed for next season. Utah's really not playing him in a few games. He played like 2 minutes. So I could see him getting bought out from Utah's stance and say, hey, we're just going to save some money in luxury tax. We're never going to play you. And him get bought out. And the whole thing with Dallas adding somebody in the buyout market is they would obviously have to make a roster move. So who's the roster move if Dallas did want to bring in somebody? Like, who would Dallas waive at that point? Because obviously you can't trade anybody now. So Trey Burke's making $4 million. You're going to waive somebody making another guy. You already waived Willie making $4 million. You're going to waive Trey Burke making $4 million. So
here's the thing about that is next year the Mavs are already going to pay the luxury tax. So all it is, if they waive somebody like that, is just spending more of Cuban's money next year, which is what it is.
He's got a lot of it. So once again, you're not bringing Hernan Gomez in to probably say, hey, you're going to play a ton. But what's the Mavs angle to it is, hey, if he's a friend of Luka's and you're looking at it saying he could give us at least some depth of what if, Dwight's in foul trouble, Maxi's hurt. It's like, all right, well, who's playing our big minutes now? Like, are you throwing out there Boban? Are you hoping Marquise Chris is, back fully healthy. You're just running Dorian at 5, going extra small. Would it help to have another athletic 6'10" guy that could at least give you some depth? I could see it.
Yeah. I don't know if he fills the role. I think him and Davis Bertans are a little redundant to me, but the big the Mavs have added is Marquise Chris. I mean, that's the guy that's that's the big that's essentially their buyout market ad. That if when he comes back from injury, hopefully he comes back from injury soon and is part of the team. He adds that element of an athletic big that's bigger than Dwight, can defend the rim a little bit, can defend with size a little bit. We've seen who did he have a really good game against earlier this year that now I'm completely blanking on. Where we were like, oh dang, he can defend.
I mean, he guarded Towns.
Yeah. He guarded Towns really well in that one game, and we were like, oh dang, he can actually defend in the post a little bit. And that was a game where we were like, okay, he can contribute on this team. And so that's the guy I think the Mavs have added. So that's where the Mavs are in the buyout market.
Eubanks. I just want to throw Eubanks' name out there too. He got waived. He was in that Thad Young Dragic.
Oh yeah, the Spurs guy.
And he went to Toronto. Toronto waived him. They're like, hey, we don't need a big on a roster because we're playing small also. So Dallas probably wouldn't add him, but he's a under the radar guy.
There you go. So there's a couple of names and options for you. The Mavs may not make a move, but the Mavs front office has lied to us before. So there you go. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs. We will be back with another post game after the Pelicans game. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
So,
boom!